All right, let's kick off. Hello everyone, and welcome to the second part of our video series on AI infrastructure. So as you can see here, today we are going to focus on training workloads and how we can just enable and optimize AI infrastructure for training workloads. So let's say to help you better understand this, I think memory is one of the key areas when it comes to the AI training models, and that's something that we need to have very good understanding, and then having that solid understanding of memory can help us to better operationalize and also optimize the AI infrastructure for AI training workloads. So let's say if you have a model that is roughly 15 GB, like let's say if you have like 7 billion parameters, it's a static size for that model is around 15 GB. And let's say if you want to run that, you might think of a card with 16 GB of VRAM, which is enough. So that would be like the assumption. But if you look at this pie chart here, the static weight are actually only about 15%, of the total footprint of a model. The real storage are where we have the optimizer state. So whenever you are training a model, you need to just store the optimizer state, and as you can see here, it can just get up to like 35% of the memory. Then we have the gradient. So you need to just state those gradient, and then that can also get up to 15% of the memory footprint of the model. And then last but not least, the main part is the activation, which is the intermediate output needed for back propagation. So, you know, like when you are trying to train any neural-based types of AI model, you have forward propagation and also back propagation. And then when you move toward when you do the forward steps, you need to just store some of these activations so that you can use it in backward propagation. So for large model with big batch size, these activation can easily become your single largest memory consumer. So with this slide, I think you have a good understanding that when we talk about the memory footprint for when it comes to the AI training workload, we're not just about talking about the model weight. There are like some other key component of the memory that we need to make sure that we have a good understanding of those. So let's walk through the static memory part. So let's say we have a model, a 7 billion parameters model in FP16 precision. So, you know, like if you are using your model parameters in FP32, each parameters can take 4 bytes. But then if you're using like FP16 or a BF16, each model parameters can get 2 bytes and can consume 2 bytes. So then the model weight the equation that you can see here, you just need to multiple to the number of parameters, multiple by the bytes that is consuming, and then you usually have like an overhead of 10% as well. So let's say for 7 billion parameters, 7 multiplied by 2, as we said, this is FP16, and then in total you can think of 15.4 gigabyte just for model weights. For the optimizer states, we usually just, when it comes to the optimizer state, there are like 2 key components, the momentum and also the variance, as you can see. And we usually, for stability, we store those parameters in FP32, so the highest precision. And then let's say for 7 billion parameters, because it's going to be 2 and each of them has 4 byte, so you can say number of parameter multiplied by 8, which is like 56 GBs just going to be used for the optimizer. And then the gradient, for the gradient, it's just let's say if you are using FP16, so your gradient can just get 14 gigabyte of memory. So in total 85.4. So for just one model, which is where around like 16, you have like extra, I would say around 70 GB just for things like optimizer and gradient. And that's not all. So as I said, we need to think of the dynamic part, which is the activation. So those three components that we discussed, it was more like a kind of static memory footprint. The activation memory is scaled actually linearly with the batch size and also the sequence length. So as you can see here, when we move from a standard context of 2048, when you move it toward the long context like 8192, the memory usage spike actually, and you may end up having a out of memory issue. And so this is like a kind of rough estimate of how you can calculate the memory for the activation. So number of the batch size multiplied by the sequence length, and then you need to make sure you have an idea of the hidden dimension, the number of layers, the parameters that is using, and then some overhead. And usually activation is the key component of the memory size. So here you can see like a script that can help you quickly, just a function, Python function that can quickly get the number of parameters, the number of layers, the hidden dimension, batch size, and the sequence length, and can help you to just calculate all the memory that you needed for each component. So now let's think of like a decision, kind of like a flowchart. So like when it comes to the memory, if your model with all those key components that we discussed can fit it to a memory of one single GPU, that's kind of like a very happy path. So, and then you're going to just feed that model into the one GPU. And then in order to improve the training, you usually need to think of some parallelism approach. So if your model, as you can see in these decision metrics, your model can fit it to one GPU, you can just use data parallelism. We're going to just discuss more of these different approaches. But then if your model cannot be fitted to the one GPU, then if you know what is the bottleneck, you can think of approaches like ZeRO or tensor parallelism. And if your activation is too big, you can think of approaches like pipeline parallelism or checkpointing. And then these are like the these are like the main approaches that can help you to optimize your training workload. One thing that you need to note is that there is no one size fit all strategy. Your scaling path, so these are like the approaches that can help you to scale, and that scaling path depends entirely on what and where your memory is being chalked. Let's go through the details of all these different approaches. So data parallelism, so the concept here is very straightforward. We put a full copy of the entire model on every single GPU. Then we take our global batch of data and slice it up, so each card or each GPU process a different pieces of information. After every steps, then the GPU synchronize their finding through an all reduce approach. So the bottleneck is this sync happening here. So, and that's going to happen in every single step, which is why high bandwidth interconnect like NVLink is critical for that networking to between all these GPUs. So data parallelism is very effective for speed, and as long as you have a networking that can handle the constant heavy synchronization as we mentioned here. The second strategy, which is model parallelism, We have two main ways here that we can slice the model. First, we have the pipeline parallelism, so which is actually just split the model vertically. So for example, GPU 1 is going to handle just layer 1 to 10, then passes the result to the GPU 2 for layer 11 to through 20. The downside here, this downside of this approach is that the idle time. So where one GPU is just waiting for the others. So let's say whenever you are processing anything with GPU 1, the GPU 2 is idle and waiting for that information. To deal with that, we have the tensor parallelism, which is more complex. It is split individual map operation within a layer across GPUs. This is very fast, but require massive communication speed, meaning you absolutely need a NVLink. Model parallelism is the only way to handle giant architecture, but it actually needs a careful balancing to avoid wasting expensive compute power. The third strategy, which is the ZeRO model, it's a very popular one when it comes to the optimizing training workload. So if you want the industry standard that balances memory efficiency with performance, ZeRO is actually the answer. And then we have 3 stages for ZeRO. So we have the first ZeRO stands for ZeRO Redundancy Optimizer, and its genius is sharding data instead of replicating it. So we have stage 1, which shard the optimizer state, giving you a 4x memory reduction. In stage 2, which is actually the sweet spot, it shards both the optimizer and also the gradient for an 8x reduction of memory footprint. And then the stage 3, which is the complex one, you shard everything, including the weight, and which allows for linear memory scaling but come with high communication overhead. So the recommendation, start with the stage 2, I would say. Only move to stage 3 for truly massive model that simply won't fit in any other ways. Another things that you need to can help you to optimize your footprint, memory footprint, is the precision. So as we know, like, optimization is all about the trade-off. Sometimes we spend a little more time calculating to save a lot of memory. So mixed precision. So we use 16-bit map for the heavy calculation, but we keep the 32-bit master copy for stability. This cuts your memory use by 50% and can double your speed. And then there is a gradient checkpointing. Instead of storing every single activation, we discard them and just recompute them on fly during back propagation. You can save a staggering 50 to 70% in memory, though it will cost you about 20 to 30% more compute time. These techniques allow you to punch about above your weight class and train much larger model on the hardware you already have. So you see, like, gradient checkpointing, in every step you store it, but then if you do checkpointing instead of a standard approach, you just store some of those like gradients that can help you to just improve your memory, but of course it's going to cost you some compute time. Now let's talk about flash attention. So we have standard attention, which has a quadratic problem. So if you double the sequence length, your memory usage increase quadratically. But we have flash attention, which solve this by using tiled memory I/O to make the relationship linear. And then we're talking about a 50 to 90% reduction of memory and calculation that are 2 to 4 times faster if you use flash attention. So the rule is simple. If your sequence length is over 1024 tokens, you should always have flash attention enabled. All right. So one thing that you need to consider is that the training a model is not a set it and forget it. It's a continuous life cycle. So every time, if you want to train a model, you start with the planning, where you use formulas like whatever that we provided here to estimate Like you can estimate your memory footprint, you can estimate the required flops, which you can see here. And then before the final run, you need to do benchmarking with a dummy loop to ensure your model flops utilization, MFU, is at least more than 40%. Once we are in the operation, you should just monitor loss curve for a spike and aim for over 95% GPU utilization. If utilization is low, you need to optimize by increasing the batch size. If memory is full, you need to enable ZeRO, and so on and so forth, all those different approaches. And then continuously optimize until you have like a happy training pipeline. So these frameworks ensure that you are not just training a model, but also doing so with a professional grade efficiency, which is required, especially when it comes to the training, AI training infrastructure, which has like a huge cost for a business. So some cost optimization. The biggest lever here is the spot instances. So if you train models in any of these cloud provider like AWS and Microsoft, you have this option to leverage spot instances, which can save you up to 90% cost saving. The only things that you need to consider, you need to have checkpointing to handle the interruption. You also need to do right sizing. You shouldn't just pay for 8 GPU if 4 GPU using ZeRO stage 3 can do the job for you. Use early stopping to kill a job the moment you see the validation loss plateauing. Finally, remember that larger batch size generally lead to better efficiency and also a lower cost per data sample. So the key takeaway from this slide is that the strategic resource management is what separates an expensive experiment from a sustainable business product. So let's just quickly go through like a practical scenario. Imagine you have a 7 billion parameters model on 8 A140 GB hardware. The constraint here is that the model is too big for a single card. So our resolution here is to use ZeRO stage 2, which shard the optimizer and also gradient. And then it can help you to just have the memory very manageable. Now look at another scenario 2 with a 70 billion parameters model. Here the weight and activation are so massive that we need 64 GPUs. And 3D parallelism, combining data pipeline and tensor parallelism all at once, and it can help to fit in 80 GB GPUs via sharding. And then of course the status here is very complex because we are just trying to use a massive model. As model grows here, your infrastructure does not just get bigger, it actually gets significantly more complex to orchestrate as well, that you need to also understand this. All right, let's wrap up. One thing that you need to remember, your memory footprint is dominated by optimizer states and activation, not just the weight as we had it at the initial state. Always use the formula that we provided you to estimate your needs. Never guess. That's the key things. For most cases, ZeRO stage 2 will be your default scaling strategy. And then I'll give you like a kind of I will give you like practice as well. I would suggest to try to calculate the requirement for a 15 billion parameters model on 40 GB A100 to determine if you'll need stage 3 to optimize your footprint. Now that you know how to build and train these models, the next level will be on AI inferencing, and we're going to talk about the real-time inference. All right, thanks everyone, and stay tuned for the next one.